Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing me to stand before you today and address an issue that, whether we acknowledge it or not, affects us all. A truth that for far too long has been shrouded in politeness and often buried beneath societal expectations. Today we talk about something that needs to be said: stop being nice to men. For centuries, society has held rigid expectations about how men and women should behave, often reinforcing the notion that women must be nurturing, self-sacrificing, and accommodating to those around them, especially men. These roles have been deeply embedded in the fabric of our cultures and traditions, shaping everything from the way we are raised to the way we interact with one another. Women, in particular, have been socialized to believe that their value lies in their ability to care for others, to put the needs of others before their own, and to serve in ways that often go unnoticed or unappreciated. The idea of women being nice is intricately tied to this long-standing expectation. The assumption is that a nice woman is one who is compliant, pleasing, and unobtrusive. She is expected to accommodate the needs and desires of others, especially men, without ever asking for anything in return. It is seen as virtuous, as though a woman's worth is inextricably linked to how much she can endure or how much she is willing to give of herself, often at the expense of her own desires or well-being. However, this notion of gendered expectations is flawed and outdated. These traditional roles do not allow for the full complexity of who a woman is or who she can become. Women are not meant to simply be caretakers or helpers, positioned as secondary to men in every aspect of life. We must challenge the assumption that men's desires and comfort always take precedence over a woman's happiness, dreams, or boundaries. By accepting and perpetuating these outdated gender roles, we perpetuate a system that restricts women from exploring their full potential. Breaking free from these traditional roles is not just about rejecting societal norms, but about understanding that men and women are equally capable of being strong, independent, and multifaceted human beings. Gender should never define how one behaves in relationships, career, or society. A woman should not have to dim her light or suppress her voice just to fit into a mold that society has created for her. Neither should a man be burdened with the expectation that he must always be the dominant force, the protector, or the provider. These antiquated ideas of what it means to be a man or a woman need to be re-examined and redefined. Men and women should be free to express themselves fully with compassion, strength, vulnerability, and power without being constrained by these artificial boundaries. Over-accommodation, particularly in the context of how women have been socialized to interact with men, comes at an often hidden and hefty price. It refers to the tendency to go beyond simple politeness or empathy, to the point where a woman sacrifices her own needs, desires, and boundaries in order to please, placate, or accommodate others. This behavior, while frequently encouraged by societal expectations, can lead to profound consequences emotionally, mentally, and even physically for those who practice it. For women, the pressure to over-accommodate is immense. From a young age, many are conditioned to believe that their primary role in relationships, whether familial, romantic, or professional, is to be supportive and agreeable. They are told, directly or indirectly, that being nice means constantly giving, nurturing, and putting others first. It can be a subtle but pervasive message: your comfort, your needs, and your voice matter less than those of others, particularly the men around you. Over time, this behavior can erode a woman's sense of self. By constantly putting others' needs first, women may begin to lose touch with their own desires, preferences, and even their own identity. When we suppress our voices or hide our true feelings in order to avoid conflict or to maintain peace, we allow external expectations to define who we are. This silent compromise chips away at self-worth and can lead to feelings of resentment, exhaustion, and frustration. While the outward appearance may be one of harmony, internally there can be a growing sense of emptiness, as if one's true self is being sidelined in favor of an idealized, unrelenting niceness. Over-accommodation can also foster unhealthy dynamics in relationships. When one party is always the giver and the other the receiver, there is an inherent imbalance of power. In many cases, this dynamic becomes toxic. Men, whether intentionally or not, may come to expect this constant giving and may not understand or care to understand the toll it takes. In romantic relationships, this imbalance can create resentment. The woman becomes the caretaker, the emotional laborer, the one who is always on, while the man may take her efforts for granted. He may come to expect niceness and selflessness without recognizing the emotional burden it imposes. This accommodation can extend beyond personal relationships into the professional world. Women are often expected to work harder, to be more accommodating, and to go the extra mile to prove their value, all while navigating gendered expectations that their contributions should be quieter and less assertive than their male counterparts. In workplaces, this can manifest as women feeling compelled to overextend themselves, taking on extra tasks, staying silent in meetings, or accepting unfair treatment just to fit in or avoid being labeled as difficult or demanding. The price of overaccommodation isn't just emotional or relational, it's also physical. Studies have shown that the stress of always accommodating others can manifest in physical symptoms such as chronic fatigue, headaches, sleep disturbances, and even long-term health issues like anxiety or depression. The mental load of constantly monitoring others' emotions and needs while suppressing one's own desires can be overwhelming and, over time, debilitating. Moreover, overaccommodation reinforces the idea that a woman's worth is tied to how much she can give. It ties her value to her ability to care for others rather than her intrinsic worth as a person. This mindset is damaging not just to the individual, but to society at large. It teaches women to see themselves as caregivers first, human beings second. It undermines the idea that women have the right to define their own paths, pursue their own dreams, and live authentic, fulfilling lives without constantly placing the needs of others ahead of their own. Establishing healthy boundaries is one of the most crucial aspects of self-respect and self-preservation, especially in a society that often expects individuals, particularly women, to be overly accommodating and self-sacrificial. Boundaries are not just about saying no to others, they are about defining and asserting your personal space, your emotional limits, and your needs in relationships, whether with family, friends, colleagues, or romantic partners. They are an essential part of maintaining mental, emotional, and physical well-being. For too long, women have been taught that saying no is selfish or unkind. They've been conditioned to believe that they must always be available, always be giving, and always be nice. However, this type of overaccommodation undermines one's health and happiness. Healthy boundaries are the antidote to this relentless pressure to please. They are a form of self-care that allows individuals to protect their time, energy, and emotional resources, ensuring that their own needs are met before they can give to others. Setting boundaries doesn't mean being harsh, rude, or unkind. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Boundaries come from a place of deep self-respect. They show that you value yourself enough to protect your emotional and mental health, and that you believe your needs are just as important as those of others. Boundaries create a space for people to engage in healthy, respectful relationships where mutual understanding is prioritized. They are essential in preventing burnout, resentment, and emotional depletion that often result from giving too much without receiving the same level of respect in return. One of the most important aspects of encouraging healthy boundaries is recognizing that it's okay to say no. Women, in particular, are often socialized to avoid saying no for fear of being perceived as rude, difficult, or unaccommodating. But no is not a bad word. In fact, saying no is one of the most powerful acts of self-care you can perform. It allows you to preserve your energy, focus on what truly matters, and ensure that you're not being manipulated or coerced into doing things you don't want to do. By learning to say no, you are reclaiming control over your own life and making it clear to others that your time and emotional well-being are valuable. Boundaries also protect against emotional manipulation and toxic relationships. In a world where women are often expected to fulfill a variety of roles, caregiver, partner, worker, friend, setting clear boundaries allows them to navigate these roles without compromising their sense of self. Without boundaries, it's easy to fall into relationships or situations that are draining, exploitative, or damaging. The inability to say no leaves women vulnerable to manipulation, guilt-tripping, and emotional exhaustion. Healthy boundaries allow individuals to communicate their limits effectively, preventing others from taking advantage of their kindness or generosity. Creating boundaries also means learning to recognize your own needs and prioritizing them. This requires self-awareness and the courage to be honest with yourself about what you need to feel supported, loved, and valued. For many, especially women, this may involve an uncomfortable shift in mindset, moving from a place of people-pleasing and self-sacrifice to a place of assertiveness and self-preservation. It might involve saying no to social obligations, work demands, or even family pressures that drain your energy or go against your values. It might involve carving out time for yourself, whether that means taking time off from work, spending time alone, or engaging in activities that nourish your soul. Setting boundaries is not just about what you say no to, but also about what you say yes to. It means creating a life that is aligned with your values and desires, not one that is shaped by external expectations or pressures. When you have healthy boundaries, you are empowered to say yes to the things that truly matter to you, whether that's pursuing a career goal, taking care of your mental health, spending time with people who uplift you, or simply having the space to rest and recharge. Boundaries allow you to protect what is sacred to you, ensuring that your energy and time are spent in ways that contribute to your growth and happiness. Moreover, healthy boundaries are not just important for individual well-being, they are essential for the health of any relationship. Whether in romantic partnerships, friendships, or family dynamics, boundaries foster respect and understanding. In relationships, people must be able to communicate their needs and limits without fear of backlash or judgment. By establishing clear boundaries, individuals can build stronger, more authentic connections where both parties feel valued and heard. Without boundaries, relationships can easily become unbalanced, with one person taking more than they are giving, or one person constantly sacrificing their needs for the sake of the other. Setting boundaries isn't always easy. It requires courage, practice, and at times confrontation. But it is an essential skill for maintaining emotional and mental well-being. It's important to remember that boundaries are not about shutting people out or being unkind. They are about creating a space where you can be your authentic self, where your needs are met, and where your relationships can thrive. Healthy boundaries empower you to live a life that is true to who you are, not to the expectations of others. They allow you to maintain balance and harmony in your life, free from the constant pressure to over-accommodate and please everyone around you. Tyler Perry is one of the most influential figures in contemporary media, known for his films, television shows, and stage productions that have resonated deeply with audiences, particularly African Americans. His work has not only entertained but also challenged cultural norms, provided powerful narratives, and empowered audiences to confront difficult issues in their personal lives and relationships. One of the most significant aspects of Perry's influence lies in how he portrays the struggles and triumphs of women, especially Black women, in a way that encourages them to challenge societal expectations and embrace their strength and worth. Through his iconic character, Medea, Perry has created a figure who defies the traditional expectations of how women, especially older women, should behave. Medea, a no-nonsense, bold, and unapologetically strong character, challenges the conventional idea of a woman as someone who must be soft, accommodating, and demure. Instead, she represents a woman who speaks her truth, sets boundaries, and refuses to shrink herself in the face of adversity. Medea's character embodies resilience, wisdom, and the importance of self-empowerment, teaching viewers that being nice or overly accommodating is not a requisite for love, respect, or success. Perry's works often feature women in central roles who are grappling with difficult situations, relationships that require sacrifice, family dynamics that demand loyalty, and personal struggles that challenge their self-worth. These women, many of whom are portrayed as strong but emotionally burdened, are often forced to confront the reality that they must stop sacrificing themselves for the sake of others. Perry's characters challenge the cultural narrative that women must always be caregivers or nurturers, constantly giving without receiving in return. He pushes the idea that women deserve respect, love, and the freedom to be their authentic selves without having to live up to impossible standards of perfection. One of the key themes in Perry's work is the idea of finding strength through adversity and reclaiming one's voice. Women in Perry's stories are often shown as battling the effects of over-accommodation, whether in relationships with men, family, or society at large. These characters frequently find themselves in situations where they have given so much of themselves that they've lost sight of who they truly are. However, their journey is one of self-discovery, self-respect, and ultimately empowerment. Whether it's a character like Helen in Why Did I Get Married, or the countless women in his stage plays, Perry's narratives consistently encourage viewers to recognize their worth and stop sacrificing their happiness for the comfort of others. What sets Perry apart is his ability to blend entertainment with life lessons. He doesn't shy away from depicting women who make mistakes, who struggle, or who are subjected to the pressures of traditional gender roles. Yet these women are never portrayed as victims. They are empowered to take control of their own lives, often in the face of overwhelming odds. Perry's stories invite women to confront their fears, recognize their value, and walk away from toxic relationships or situations where they are being exploited or underappreciated. His characters often experience profound growth, learning to prioritize themselves, establish boundaries, and demand respect from the people around them. In addition to Medea, Perry's other female characters reflect a diverse range of experiences and perspectives, yet they share a common thread. They all undergo a transformation where they stop trying to fulfill others' expectations and start living for themselves. In The Family That Prays, for example, the characters of Alice and Andrea challenge their respective husbands and families, asserting their independence and refusing to accept mistreatment. Through these characters, Perry subtly critiques the traditional gender roles that women are expected to uphold and encourages them to step into their power. Perry also addresses the importance of mental health, self-care, and emotional healing in his work, subjects that are often overlooked in mainstream media. In many of his films, women face emotional trauma, whether it's from childhood, abusive relationships, or societal pressures. These women are not merely passive figures in their stories. They actively seek healing, support, and empowerment, and Perry encourages viewers to recognize that self-care is a vital part of the healing process. His works challenge the notion that women must always be strong and stoic, allowing room for vulnerability, self-reflection, and emotional growth. Furthermore, Tyler Perry's influence extends beyond the screen. He has become a cultural icon who has used his platform to advocate for social justice, particularly within the African American community. He's used his success to create opportunities for others, especially Black actors and filmmakers, providing a space for Black stories. Self-respect is one of the most profound sources of personal strength. It is the foundation upon which all other forms of self-care, self-love, and personal empowerment are built. When we cultivate self-respect, we are acknowledging our inherent worth, setting healthy boundaries, and refusing to allow others to treat us in ways that diminish or devalue us. It is a declaration that we are deserving of kindness, dignity, and fairness, regardless of external circumstances. Self-respect is not about arrogance or entitlement. Rather, it is about recognizing your own value and acting in alignment with that recognition. It is a quiet but powerful confidence that says, I am worthy of respect, love, and care. It involves understanding your own needs, desires, and limitations and honoring them without guilt or shame. When you have self-respect, you are not afraid to say no when something doesn't serve you or is harmful to your well-being. You are not afraid to speak your truth, even when it may be uncomfortable or unpopular. The power of self-respect manifests most clearly in our relationships with others. People who have self-respect do not tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or mistreatment. They understand that they deserve to be treated with kindness, honesty, and fairness. This respect for oneself sets the tone for how others will treat them. When you show others that you respect yourself, you set a standard for the kind of treatment you will accept. Without self-respect, it is easy to fall into situations where your needs are ignored, your voice is silenced, or your worth is undervalued. People will often treat you in ways that reflect how you treat yourself, and when you do not value yourself, you allow others to walk all over you. Self-respect also plays a critical role in the choices we make in our lives. When you respect yourself, you are more likely to make decisions that are in your best interest, whether in terms of your career, relationships, or personal growth. It empowers you to prioritize your own happiness and well-being, even when it requires making difficult decisions or stepping away from situations or people that no longer serve you. The decisions that stem from self-respect are often the ones that align with your true values, desires, and goals rather than those driven by external pressures or societal expectations. For example, someone with self-respect is more likely to walk away from a toxic relationship, whether romantic, familial, or professional, because they understand that they deserve to be treated with dignity and love. They are not willing to stay in situations that undermine their self-worth, no matter how difficult it may seem to leave. This act of choosing yourself, of valuing your emotional, mental, and physical well-being is one of the most powerful demonstrations of self-respect. Furthermore, self-respect is essential for personal growth and development. When you respect yourself, you acknowledge that you are worthy of success, happiness, and fulfillment. You stop apologizing for your ambitions and stop dimming your light to make others feel comfortable. You embrace your strengths and talents, knowing that you have the right to pursue your dreams unapologetically. Self-respect means refusing to settle for mediocrity or for situations that do not challenge you to grow and become the best version of yourself. It also means taking responsibility for your actions and understanding that your choices have consequences. People with self-respect hold themselves accountable. They do not blame others for their mistakes or shortcomings. Instead, they take ownership of their actions and learn from their experiences. This level of maturity is vital for long-term personal development and fosters a sense of inner peace. When we respect ourselves, we can make mistakes without losing our sense of worth. We can learn from those mistakes, grow stronger, and continue to move forward with grace. Self-respect is also intricately connected to the concept of personal integrity. When you have self-respect, you are consistent in your actions, thoughts, and beliefs. You do not compromise your values or principles to please others or to fit into a mold that society or peers have created for you. Personal integrity means being honest with yourself and others, standing firm in your beliefs, and living in a way that aligns with your true values. It is about being authentic even when it is difficult, and refusing to compromise who you are for the sake of external validation. This unwavering commitment to your true self is a manifestation of deep self-respect. Moreover, self-respect can lead to a more fulfilling and balanced life. When we practice self-respect, we make time for ourselves, our needs, and our well-being. We set aside time for rest, self-reflection, and rejuvenation. We prioritize our mental and emotional health, acknowledging that we cannot pour from an empty cup. By taking care of ourselves, we ensure that we have the strength and energy to care for others and to pursue our goals. Self-respect encourages a balanced approach to life, where self-care is not seen as selfish but as a necessary part of maintaining well-being. One powerful aspect of self-respect is that it is a choice. It is a mindset and a practice that anyone can develop, regardless of past experiences or current circumstances. You don't have to wait for external validation or approval to begin respecting yourself. It starts with the internal decision to acknowledge your worth and to refuse to accept anything less than the respect, love, and care you deserve. This mindset doesn't require perfection, it simply requires a commitment to honoring your humanity and your needs. When self-respect is cultivated, it can transform not only the individual but also their relationships and interactions with the world around them. It sets the stage for healthier, more fulfilling connections with others, as people are drawn to those who treat themselves with dignity and kindness. It also fosters a sense of inner peace and contentment because self-respect allows you to live authentically and without regret, knowing that you are true to yourself and your values. Empathy and excessive niceness are often confused, but they are distinctly different concepts that affect the way we engage with others and navigate our relationships. While both involve a level of care for others, empathy is rooted in understanding, compassion, and respect, while excessive niceness often stems from a desire to please or avoid conflict, sometimes at the cost of personal well-being and authenticity. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to feel and understand their emotions, and to respond in a way that is thoughtful and supportive. It involves recognizing the pain, joy, or struggle of others and responding with genuine concern. Empathy allows for deep connection because it acknowledges and respects the emotional experiences of others, creating a space for vulnerability and mutual understanding. It helps us form authentic relationships where we can support each other through challenges and celebrate each other's successes. Empathy is not about sacrificing your own needs, but rather about being emotionally present and supportive without losing sight of your own boundaries. Excessive niceness, on the other hand, often comes from a place of people-pleasing. It involves putting others' needs ahead of your own to the point of self-neglect, all in the hope of being liked, accepted, or avoiding confrontation. While kindness and generosity are valuable traits, excessive niceness can become a way of overcompensating for feelings of inadequacy or fear of rejection. People who engage in excessive niceness may say yes to things they do not want to do, suppress their true feelings to avoid conflict, and consistently put others' needs first, often to their own detriment. This behavior can lead to resentment, burnout, and a lack of fulfillment because it neglects the person's own needs, desires, and boundaries. The key difference between empathy and excessive niceness lies in the intention and the result. Empathy is focused on understanding and connecting, without the need to change oneself or subjugate one's own feelings. It fosters mutual respect and allows for healthy, balanced relationships. Empathy allows you to offer support to others while still respecting your own emotional and physical space. It invites open communication where both parties feel heard and validated. Excessive niceness, on the other hand, is often driven by a fear of disapproval, conflict, or rejection. It is about giving to others in a way that seeks validation or approval, even when it compromises personal well-being. Someone who is excessively nice might agree to work late to please a boss, even when they are exhausted or have personal commitments. They might avoid speaking up in a conversation because they are afraid of upsetting someone, even when their voice or opinion is important. While excessive niceness can seem benevolent on the surface, it can ultimately lead to unhealthy dynamics where the individual's needs are never met and where their boundaries are constantly violated. A key problem with excessive niceness is that it can lead to emotional exhaustion. When you are always trying to meet the needs and expectations of others, there is little energy left for yourself. This can lead to resentment, frustration, and burnout. You may end up feeling taken for granted as others may begin to expect your willingness to accommodate them without reciprocation. Over time, the cycle of people-pleasing becomes emotionally draining, and the individual may begin to lose sight of their own identity and desires. Empathy, by contrast, does not require sacrificing oneself for the sake of others. It does not mean saying yes to everything or suppressing your own feelings. Instead, empathy encourages active listening, understanding, and offering support, but it also recognizes the importance of self-awareness and boundaries. Empathetic individuals are capable of offering compassion without becoming overwhelmed or losing themselves in the process. They know when to offer support and when to step back to care for themselves. Empathy fosters relationships based on mutual respect, where both parties feel valued and heard. Another important distinction is that excessive niceness often results in unbalanced relationships. A person who is excessively nice may be more likely to attract people who take advantage of their kindness or become dependent on them for emotional or material support. Because they are constantly giving without expecting anything in return, their relationships can become lopsided, with the other person benefiting from their generosity while the excessively nice person is left feeling drained and unappreciated. This dynamic can breed resentment, and over time, the individual may feel trapped in a cycle of giving that does not serve them. Empathy, on the other hand, leads to healthier and more fulfilling connections. It allows both people to express their needs, listen to each other's concerns, and support one another in meaningful ways. Empathy nurtures relationships where both individuals feel understood, respected, and valued. It does not allow for one person to dominate or manipulate the other, but instead fosters a partnership where both parties are empowered to be their authentic selves. Empathy is about balance and mutual care, where both people contribute to the relationship in a way that feels equitable and respectful. Furthermore, excessive niceness can also stifle personal growth. When you are always accommodating others and never setting boundaries, you limit your ability to develop a strong sense of self. You may find it difficult to make decisions that prioritize your own well-being, as you are conditioned to always consider the needs of others first. This lack of self-awareness and boundary setting can prevent you from pursuing your own passions, goals, and dreams. In contrast, empathy allows for self-advocacy while still being considerate of others. It empowers you to pursue your own growth and happiness while still maintaining healthy relationships with those around you. Ultimately, empathy is about connection and understanding, while excessive niceness is about seeking external validation at the cost of one's own well-being. Empathy enriches relationships and builds trust, while excessive niceness can lead to feelings of frustration and emotional exhaustion. Learning to differentiate between these two behaviors can help individuals build more fulfilling relationships, set healthy boundaries, and live more authentically. By embracing empathy and letting go of the need to constantly please others, individuals can create a life that is both compassionate and self-respecting, where both their own needs and the needs of others are honored. The need for change in society is undeniable. For far too long, we have adhered to outdated systems, norms, and structures that perpetuate inequality, injustice, and the marginalization of various groups of people. From gender inequality to racial discrimination, from the lack of access to basic rights to the environmental crisis we face, the time for change is now. The world has evolved in so many ways, yet so many aspects of our societies remain rooted in harmful practices and ways of thinking that continue to harm individuals and communities, particularly those who are already vulnerable. One of the key areas where change is urgently needed is in the realm of gender equality. For centuries, societal expectations have limited the roles and opportunities of women, forcing them into narrow boxes of what is considered appropriate behavior. Women have been taught to be nurturing, passive, and accommodating, often at the expense of their own happiness and self-respect. This has created an imbalance where women are overburdened with the responsibility of caregiving, yet undervalued in professional, social, and political spheres. It is time to challenge these traditional gender roles and recognize that women, just like men, are entitled to autonomy, respect, and the freedom to make choices that reflect their personal desires and aspirations. But the call for change is not just about gender equality. We also need to address the persistent racial and ethnic inequalities that continue to plague our societies. Despite the progress made in civil rights movements and social justice activism, people of color still face systemic racism, discrimination, and marginalization on a daily basis. From education and employment to healthcare and law enforcement, the opportunities and treatment of people based on the color of their skin continue to differ drastically from that of their white counterparts. The ongoing struggle for racial equity demands that we examine our institutions, confront our biases, and work to dismantle the systems that perpetuate inequality. It is time for society to embrace diversity, not as a token gesture, but as a fundamental principle that can enrich our lives and our communities. Another critical area where change is necessary is in how we approach mental health. For too long, mental health has been stigmatized, misunderstood, and neglected. People who struggle with mental health issues are often isolated, marginalized, and dismissed as society tends to prioritize physical health while disregarding emotional and psychological well-being. We must challenge the stigma surrounding mental health by normalizing open conversations, providing better access to care, and fostering an environment where people feel safe to seek help without fear of judgment or shame. Just as we take care of our bodies, we must also prioritize the care of our minds. By promoting mental health awareness and creating supportive, inclusive spaces for healing, we can create a society where emotional well-being is treated with the same importance as physical health. The environmental crisis is another urgent issue that demands immediate action. Climate change is no longer a distant problem, it is happening right now, and its impact is felt across the globe. From extreme weather events and rising sea levels to the destruction of ecosystems and biodiversity loss, the environment is suffering from years of neglect and exploitation. We must change our approach to how we interact with the planet, from adopting sustainable practices to advocating for policies that protect natural resources. Our current way of life, driven by consumerism, overconsumption, and disregard for the environment, is unsustainable. We must shift our mindset toward one of preservation and responsibility, recognizing that the health of the planet is directly tied to the health of its people. Economic inequality is another systemic issue that requires urgent reform. The gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen, with a small percentage of people holding the majority of the wealth and resources, while the rest of society struggles to make ends meet. This wealth disparity is not just a result of individual efforts or market forces, but a product of an economic system that is inherently unequal, where opportunities are not equally accessible to all. We must demand policies that prioritize economic justice, from fair wages and workers' rights to access to affordable housing, education, and healthcare. It is time to create a society where wealth and opportunity are not concentrated in the hands of a few, but distributed in a way that ensures everyone has the resources they need to thrive. Another pressing issue is the need for criminal justice reform. The criminal justice system, particularly in many Western nations, is riddled with bias, inequality, and abuse of power. From racial profiling and mass incarceration to the disproportionate treatment of marginalized communities, the system often fails to deliver true justice. We must push for reforms that ensure fairness, transparency, and accountability. This includes ending practices such as racial profiling, the over-policing of certain communities, and the punitive approach that favors incarceration over rehabilitation. True justice is about addressing the root causes of crime, supporting restorative justice practices, and creating systems that offer second chances rather than perpetuate cycles of incarceration.